Paging Councillor Moore, your plane is about to leave the gate.
She's actually...
All right, everyone, 9:31, and I would like to call this meeting of the Finance Committee to order and begin by acknowledging that we are in Mi'kma'ki, the traditional territory of the Mi'kmaq people, and it's a privilege to share the land with them. I'll note that we have regrets from Councillor Reinhardt and Councillor Hubley, and I'll also note that depending on how long our meeting goes today, that we have the pride flag raising at 12. So if time, depending on how this goes, we may require a short recess at that time. Moving through the agenda, are there any announcements, acknowledgements, or recognitions? Councillor Brooks.
I just want to acknowledge that I was part of, it was German Settler Day that was celebrated down at Showback, but it was actually a celebration that ended up having Acadian presence as well, and Mi'kmaq celebration as well, so it was really neat. And we got to hear more about the history of German settlers who were part of that area, and it was a good time was had by all.
Mayor McLean-Weil.
I just wanted to acknowledge the passing of Pauline Himmelman, who was a councillor here, was elected in 1973, served as a councillor for 21 years. She was the first woman elected to Modal's council, and 15 years she served as deputy warden. Councillor Bell and I had the pleasure of visiting with Pauline last year on her birthday. Her stories, which I'm sure some of which will never be published, were very enlightening as to particularly the early days of women involvement in elected office. Pretty staggering, some of them. I guess not surprising, as my own mother served as a councillor in another part of Nova Scotia. But Pauline served was the chair of the school board at the establishment of Parkview Education Centre. She served on the Dawson Memorial Hospital Foundation. She was involved in family and children's services for 20 years, helped establish the United Way, and I should say that she was the advocate for the establishment of a recreation program and recreation department within the municipality. and was involved in the hiring of Carol Randall, who was the first Director of Recreation. And so when you think about how recreation and trails and parks have become such a big part of the work that we do, she was a leader in that.
Thank you very much. Councillor Bell?
And everything I was going to say has just been completed.
Councillor DeLong?
I just want to make mention of the incredible Canada Day celebration. One of our councillors takes great pride in and organizing. In New Germany, Canada Day was well celebrated this year.
All right. Seeing nothing further, we move down to public input. Am I correct in no one is here for public input? For any viewers, I would encourage you, if you can't attend these meetings, to just continue to reach out to your councillors and send requests for information into staff. Next, we have the approval of the agenda as circulated. Are there any changes proposed? No, I would take a motion to Councillor Oikel and seconded by Mayor McLean-Weil. All those in favor? Yeah. Motion passes unanimously. Next, we have the approval of the minutes from May 5th, 2026. Are there any omissions, changes, errors that need to be brought to attention? Going once, going twice, seeing none, minutes are approved. Do we have any business arising from the minutes? Nope. Next, we don't have any presentations and we don't have any consideration of correspondence, so we'll move right into staff reports. 9.1.1, the operating variance report for the fourth quarter draft. As we go through this, the slides will be available, so I would encourage folks to ask questions pertinent to those slides, and if there's a general discussion, perhaps we could save that to the end to sort of tie different pieces together.
Yes, thank you, Councillor Burns. So, good morning, Mayor, councillors, and Mr. Chair. Oh, that's not what I want. How do I, just wait a minute, Control, Alt, Tab? Oh, wait a minute. This has never happened before. I have too many windows open.
You have a lot of windows open.
So sorry. We should have tested that.
What's the thing that you want to
This.
Okay.
Control. I thought it was like this. Control. Isn't it like this duplicate thing? My apologies. Oh, it didn't get sent out? That's probably good. Okay, so we'll start over. So you have, this is your draft year-end fourth quarter operating variance report. So these would be unaudited numbers. As you know, with your discussion at the Audit Committee, the auditors are here looking at that information right now. So what this is like an overall summary that I started doing for council to kind of give you an idea of where the drivers were for any of the variances to budget. So this is showing a surplus of about 2.1 million, which is a 4.37% budget variance. If you'll recall, in our third quarter, we were projecting about a 1.8 million budget variance, so quite close to where we were projecting. The revenue variance shows about 1.6 million in additional revenue received compared to budget. De-transfer tax is a big section of that, almost 1.15 million, as well as some unbudgeted interest and grant recoveries. On the expenditure side, there is a variance of what we say 368,996, which is net area rates and the expenses themselves. Some of the changes in this was the waste collection cost reduction because of the new extended producer responsibility contract. So in essence, that's what makes up your 4.37% budget variance. We can move on to each section. So on the revenue side, we've summarized all of the major revenue categories and shown the variances within each one. I think by page, if anyone has any questions, I'm certainly open to answering them.
Councillor Oikel?
Thank you. Through you to Elena, I noticed on this one that where it says actual amount received, everything is greater under the year-end actual. Other than recreational services, you said actual program fee revenues more than budgeted, but under your actual, it isn't. It's 54 compared to the 59. So I'm just kind of wondering about that.
Yeah, certainly, Councilor Oracle. The program fees were more than budgeted, but we had some underages in other areas, and I apologize because I didn't put a comment in there for that.
Okay.
Yeah, that's my mistake, for sure.
All right, thank you.
Okay, I'll move on to the next page. This is just our grant section on provincial grants. So we had a lot more grants than we expected, and that gave us actually 10% more. And so our total revenue was 42.2 million with a budget of 40.5 million. So that's 4.03% variance on the revenue side. If we move on to the expenditures, happy to answer any questions on this page. And then the next page, which includes your grants to organizations and provincial roads and municipal road maintenance. Okay, I'll move on. The next page includes planning and zoning, garbage and waste, recreation staffing, and some of the library's LCLC and education transfers.
Councillor Oikel, you had a question?
I have two again. One is regarding the section under the planning and zoning, and you have the flood line map project, and I'm just curious regarding that, because I thought that was a kind of an in and out, that we got a grant for it, and so I'm just wondering, are there any expenditures that we as a municipality incurred because of it, that it would be listed there, or did you just forget to mention that?
No, I just didn't say that there's a grant received to offset all the costs for the floodline mapping project. Yeah.
And then the LaHave sewer maintenance, is that also an in and out, or are we responsible for that through an insurance?
These are the actual costs to replace system malfunctions for the LaHave sewer maintenance program. There's no insurance involved, but these are the actual costs for those. There's no resident recovery on these costs.
Okay, so then we're paying for that?
Yes, we are.
Okay, thank you.
I think this brings us to our final page, where our total expenditures are projected to be 39.78 million on a $39.9 million budget. So the expenditures are actually 0.47% in a differential, so very close. Our net area rates have some ins and outs. There were some savings in the actual cost of operations in the sewage collection and disposal on all the sewage treatment plants as a whole. And we don't see any issues with that. We're building the Cookville plant, and so sometimes some of those costs kind of get wrapped up in what they're doing over there. So it brings us to the surplus of 2.1 million that we will be transferring to operating reserves as per the Municipal Government Act requirements.
Any questions, discussion? Mayor McLean-Weil?
Just on the, this is going back to a previous slide, but the question around revenue from the EPR program, obviously it's more than what we anticipated. Is that because we were conservative on our estimate, or is there some other reason for that?
Through to the mayor through the chair, actually, we didn't even budget for it. It came in December, January, I think, so it was an unbudgeted revenue and an expenditure savings that we didn't actually budget for, because we weren't sure when it was actually going to happen, but it's budgeted in this fiscal, so you won't see any of those differentials now.
Councillor Oikle?
Back to the sewer maintenance, how many more years are we responsible for that?
7 years from the final installation.
But I believe we got four years left in total of the
2030, 20,
31.
2023 was the final year of installations, or 2030.
Yes, so
Yeah.
you'll see the loans kind of, yeah,
Yep.
that's correct.
Any other questions, discussion? Going once, going twice? Thank you very much for your report. Moving on down the agenda, we have the excitement for the morning. We have engineering and public works with a discussion and report on the public water filling station.
Station options analysis presentation. Starting as a bit as an overview for the presentation, we'll get into a little bit of background of the project, some of the risk overview with water infrastructure, and get into the meat of the options analysis. We have a slide on financial considerations for a few of the options, community wells, and a brief recommendation that we have, and then we'll get into some discussion. As a bit of a background, summer 2025, I'm sure we all remember, there were severe drought conditions experienced at MODL, and there was potential for repeat conditions for the upcoming summer 2026. Resident wells were stressed by these drought conditions, and council and residents were seeking alternative options for their wells. We utilized a temporary measure that we borrowed from the Bridgewater Public Service Commission to dispense water through the tap, as you may remember, at the front of the building. Council is seeking permanent options for the upcoming summer 2026 with an approved capital budget amount of $150,000. A little bit of a risk overview. So talking about water infrastructure, cross-contamination and backflow prevention are prime considerations. Cross-contamination is where a bottle or substance would come into contact with a tap or dispensing device for the water. That would taint the water coming out of it. And these can spread, it can stay on the tap for some time and create this kind of infection that grows. Backflow would be any kind of pressure change. If you had some sort of hose or tap in a contaminated vessel, that this pressure change would draw that contaminant into the system and affect the supply. Unintended filling stations can present potential hazards due to restricted access, conditioners, containers, and after-hour use that might not be supervised. Testing requirements are withheld to ensure the quality and safety of the water being dispensed. So that would be at regular intervals to ensure that quality is being maintained. Another risk that we had identified was the traffic volume and flow around the municipal services building. A couple of the options that you will see may impact traffic volumes and flow around the building, especially the visitor parking lot. So that is something to identify. So option A that we're looking at would be a portable filling station. This would model what we used as a temporary measure last year that was loaned from the Bridgewater Public Service Commission. I would note that we have returned the PSC's unit already and have constructed a municipally owned unit, which is out there now. This is a photo of it here in the presentation. We are waiting for final signage to be installed on the unit, but it is there. Just a few of the benefits and considerations with this option. The location and infrastructure already exists to have a water filling station, and residents are understanding of how the operation of the unit is done and where it is. And we can accommodate the hose for larger totes or larger containers with that option. A few things to consider would be the structure would not be able to be used outside as it currently exists in the colder months, similar to the existing unit that we were borrowing. There are some water quality safety concerns as it's kind of unattended right now and will require continual cleanance and testing. And depending on final location, potential traffic flow issues around the municipal service building, considering the hose and accessible entrances and things, and if we're accommodating larger totes, where those vehicles will be able to access the unit. Option B is an exterior of the building water dispensing unit. This would allow 4-season after-hours use for filling a maximum of a 5-gallon container. The system can either charge a fee for water or can be removed if free dispensing is wished. This system also cleans the bottle. There's a physical air gap in between the dispensing unit, and if the bottle is tipped over, it will give a blast of ozone to clean the container before dispensing occurs. There would be an agreement in place with the distributor, and there would be monthly financial considerations if we decided to dispense water at no charge for the whole year. And we'll get into that here shortly. This is just a kind of a mock-up of what the structure could look like on the side of the building. A big benefit of this would allow for 4-season filling availability, so we could go through the summer, the fall, into the winter, and back again. All equipment would be attained within the municipal services building. The contractor would provide a turnkey product installed by them. So if you chose to move forward with this option, they have all the trades necessary to come and install this unit. It could be completed within fiscal 26-27. And like I say, there is an option to charge or dispense water for free, and that's controlled internally through the command kind of module. Some considerations with this, equipment would likely require between 50 to 100 square feet of space for the management skid. This would be through our internal storage unit off the council chambers, would be the space identified. There is an ongoing fee for equipment to the distributor. I will talk a little bit more on the financial slide, but that appears to be in the range of about $3,000 a month. It provides capability to fill up a 5-gallon container. Unfortunately, you would not be able to accommodate any water totes or a hose option. There would also be competition with other water retailers within the area. And speaking to the contractor, he does operate a few other sites around the Bridgewater area and in Nova Scotia. So there are people that are using the same unit to pay for water. No hose option, and adjacent to the accessible spots would be the placement. There could be some concerns as to people using or parking in the accessible spots to use the water fill instead of the people that need them. Option C would be an external filling station, external to the building or building envelope. Be a location of a small structure with an external tap or source for filling containers. This structure would be a minimal footprint that would only contain all necessary equipment for maintenance and consumption tracking. Benefits of this would be less traffic within the municipal building around the entrances, exits, and the lobby. This unit would operate similar to the existing fill station, option A that we did discuss. Be a smaller footprint for the structure, so nobody would be entering the structure. Everything would try to be contained as a small footprint as possible. And we could explore a hose option for larger totes or containers. Considerations: location of structure and ability to use required services. This option would require us to take services from the water mains, which would involve trenching and excavation. We need electrical. We have a building foundation and structure and drainage considerations, as well as we'd have to look at some design. So proximity to those structures would help your costs some, but there is still a fair scope of work to install. It would be another external structure to maintain, traffic issues in public parking lot to consider, trailers with the totes, as we've seen last year. Using this could obstruct portions of the parking lot if it's used in the location identified in the photograph. Cost to bring services to unit and disruption of Champlain Drive. Like I mentioned, we would be looking at excavating all the way to Champlain Drive and into Champlain Drive, almost the other side, to access the main, which would get us into the excavation, connection to the water main, as well as reinstatement of the road and partial closure of the road until that work is complete. Financial considerations. So just as a point, the capital budget for the 2026-2027 budget was $150,000. I would note all options require additional fees for maintenance and testing and potential electrical fees depending on the selected option. Option A, we have an estimate of $10,000. Option B would be an estimate of initial install of $80,000 plus the ongoing rental fee of approximately $3,000 per month. And option C, we have estimated about $300,000 for the total scope of work, which I mentioned is that larger excavation, structure, electrical. Exploring community wells. I spoke to a few other municipalities that have community wells to address the drought conditions. There is potential for a lengthy legal insurance discussion. I've heard on the scale of about 2 years plus to have an agreement to decide where the liability will lay and how the testing requirements and condition of the water is going to be insured. They can be lengthy documents and take some time to clear through liability and insurance. Community wells would require registration with Nova Scotia Environment and Climate Change and more rigorous water testing than being connected to municipal supply. These would be because you create your own point source and contaminants could enter into the well either way, so they want to ensure that that water is maintained and we don't have another entity ensuring that the water that we receive is clean. Design considerations for each location, capacity of the well, that we don't affect neighboring wells and how they perform or dispense water, well depth, what would be an appropriate well depth for the area, level of access, that would be who can access at what time, what kind of structure we're looking at. Property acquisition, if we choose to maintain the well ourselves, we would need some sort of property to put it on. Other municipalities have used community groups, work with community groups to use their land and build something from that. Accessible parking was identified, which would require an asphalt surface and so that it's accessible for all. Maintenance of structure/wells would be ongoing around the municipality, utilizing staff time. If the identified areas could be geographically diverse, that would take a little bit more time to collect your samples for testing. Other municipalities have used, in conjunction with the community well option, the rain barrel programs. These have been quite well received, with their volumes going quite quickly and people looking for more rain barrels. So I just mentioned that other people have used that as a method to kind of combat. A few things I would other note. They included location, signage, plumbing changes if the community grate was using a structure to house the tap and not an external structure. They also had some cleaning structures. If the water wasn't quite to quality, they needed internal cleaning. They also created kind of a grant for hosting the tap, and that was in the range of a few $1,000s. That was paid to the community group. And the one capital budget, I know the district of Chester was looking at it, they had budgeted $210,000 for their community well program. So our recommendation would be we proceed with option A and create a MODL-owned water fill station to address immediate drought conditions this year, which we have kind of done that to maintain that service as the PSC required their unit back. MODL would also initiate a pilot program in coordination with communication staff to better understand the current need and answer unknowns, develop a future-based data decision. We would hope to use multiple channels to engage with people to understand the frequency, where they're coming from, what size containers they need, what hours they would hope to access any kind of unit to help further define that scope to inform any future decisions. Further definition of a project scope and utilize existing programs to determine if these could also address resident need. To ensure that people are understanding the coupon program and if that would provide a potable option, if they need larger options that we need, like to look at a bulk water station. And this pilot would allow time to investigate partners, PSC, REMO, LCLC, fire departments. We've had preliminary chats with all of these entities, and there has been some interest or acceptance for taps or water filling infrastructure. It would allow us to explore further options for filling station locations or partnerships. So I'll leave it for discussion.
Councillor Oikel?
Thank you. So although the water is given freely, and this is probably not a question for you, perhaps it's more for Alex, it's freely to residents, do we pay for the water from the Public Service Commission? And if so, do we know how the difference between what we were regularly paying on an average and what it has now become during the summer when we give the water freely to residents?
Yeah, we do have the figures on the cost of the water. It's negligible. A larger cost for council to consider going forward would be around the staff time, because we would be responsible for ensuring the quality and cleanliness of the station, whereas the BPSC were sending staff last summer to do it. Do either of you have those figures in terms of the volume of water given out and cost?
I do, yeah. I have approximately 84 cubic meters, which, looking at what I can see, the best I can figure, we spent $122 on water. Yeah,
awesome.
Water is one of those resources.
Yeah, well, I didn't know how much,
Yeah.
we were being charged by the town, so.
Again, the primary cost factor will not be if you're giving away Public Service Commission water, the cost of the water is not large. The cost that you will incur is you will be spending staff time because we have to clean and maintain that unit and complete regular testing.
Councillor Smith?
I have a few questions about the community well
Sure, yeah. Go back to that slide.
option.
Sure.
I've just been following what Chester's been doing and find it really interesting because it seems like, one of the things that they're tapping into is underused water resources. So in many of our communities, we have halls or fire stations or other buildings that have a water source, and during those drought months may have wells that, you know, are in pretty good condition.
Yep.
And also, there's often public funding that goes into building those wells, maintaining those wells. I know that a couple halls in my area have recently upgraded their wells, and it's really great for the community hall. And just to watch what Chester's doing in partnering with some halls. They're all different kinds of organizations. It just seems to make so much sense because it's putting the water resource in the community, and it's giving a bit of a bonus to those halls. They're giving them like $5,000 each a year, just to say thank you, you're making this available. And so the two questions I have from your presentation around this is, how often would a municipality be responsible for testing a water source like that if you were partnering with a community hall? And the other question was around the potential lengthy legal insurance discussions. I hadn't seen that come up in what I was seeing from the municipality of Chester.
Yep.
They seem to be signing MOUs and getting things together, but maybe I'm wrong. Maybe there's been some delays. So not to, you know, target Chester, but that's a situation I know about. So I would just be interested if you could go into some of those
I guess
things.
to address the first one, I don't know if anybody's been to Region of Queens and the Cowie Well, the community well that's down there. That's been pre-existing for some time. And speaking to their staff, they're testing at least weekly the system, but that would be, once we apply to Nova Scotia Environment, that would be a process that they would probably stipulate. And our insurance would like to probably see more frequently than not. I think it would be in our best interest to test at least weekly, you know, if not probably more. In addressing the second one, I believe I was speaking to Fred Wynod, their engineer at the District of Chester, and I think it might have been more background, that insurance liability piece. He told me that they were in the span of 2 years before, and they were quite excited to start putting in wells this year. They're targeting August, from what I understand from him. So I think that was quite a battle with their insurer beforehand to kind of develop what that agreement was going to look like, and that they could roll that out and create those MOUs with the community groups. But I think they're finally starting to get in there, that they're going to start making some physical infrastructure now. It's getting that piece to feel that the insurer feels comfortable.
Yeah, just to provide a small bit more background, in speaking with the CAO and deputy CAO, the community well option had been in discussion over in Chester for several years. They have a more drastic water shortage issue than the municipality, just because of the layout of their municipality, and you know, I think we're all aware of some of the water issues in the village of Chester. So they had been exploring it for some time. And various options had come up, for example, attempting to provide some funding to community groups and allowing them to simply operate it. And in their insurance and legal reviews, they determined that that was not a prudent approach. It does download a lot of responsibility onto the community partners, but the advice they received was that it also wouldn't shield the municipality from responsibility if something were to go wrong. So it was a more detailed review. Now, we could certainly piggyback on some of their work. They've already eliminated some options, but the engineering department is quite correct to point out that it's not simply a matter of being able to hand over money and create an MOU. We would have to go through our own insurance and legal reviews to ensure that our own insurer was satisfied that we had taken the appropriate steps.
All right, next I have the deputy mayor and then Councillor DeLong.
Thank you. Earlier you spoke to the cost of $122. Is that what it cost in the previous season for the amount of water that was?
That's what I was able to find. Yeah.
$122. Okay, that shocks me completely that it's that low. And I do realize there's costs that you don't see in just the water. So I wanted to clarify that. And then my other comment I just wanted to make on the community well option is, if this is a route that we go, ensuring that people aren't getting water for profit when you think of trucks that sell water, whether it's for personal use or a pool or that way. I know the mayor and I have had discussions with the town of Lunenburg mayor and deputy mayor, and that was a concern they were seeing, is that trucks that deliver water for profit were filling up at the community stations. So that's the only concern I have in how we would regulate or oversee that. So I'm just putting that out there. Thank you.
If I may, Mr. Chair, just with the cost of the water differential, we didn't have any meters in metering that unit, but we do this year. So we know that the differential from year to year, the cost was about $122, but we could have had less staff in the building that summer too. So I think it's good to know that it probably didn't cost a lot, but we do have meters in place now, so we will have a very good understanding of how much water and volume is actually being used this year.
And going forward, we see it, and it'll change as the drought patterns kind of change in length and duration and all that.
Councillor DeLong?
Thank you. In your presentation, you referenced the Walkerton tragedy. Can you speak a bit more to the safety considerations that we need to put into place and like what the Water Safety Act covers? And I have a follow-up question about rain barrels and how we might implement that program here.
Yeah, sure. I guess very quickly, not to gloss over or anything, Walkerton is a kind of a township in Ontario, and they used ground under direct influence wells to supply the city. And these wells were affected by surface runoff, which is an issue with wells that can come, I think it was through agricultural use. It came in and infected the wells, and that got into the supply. And the infected water was sent out continuously, and it was used, and there was actually, I think, there was at least 7 fatalities, I think I looked at, so there was fatalities. A lot of them were a lot of youths and the older population, and there was quite a few cases of severe illness from that water. So water illness and sickness is one of those things you have to watch out with water security. Everybody takes advantage of turning the water and expecting clean water, but it's an active process every day, and it's a whole industry unto itself to ensure that we keep people safe.
Yeah, can you speak more to the safety considerations that would be in our specific system to prevent something like that?
Yeah, I would look at having some kind of structure to maintain everything and ensuring that we include that backflow prevention. So any kind of contaminant can't be drawn into that system to affect that. Ensure that we have positive drainage coming well away from the well. You'd look at including the backflow, like I say, ensuring that it's clean and tested, so we know if we have an issue to ensure that water doesn't reach residents who may not be aware. Ensuring that we have that education component to understand, it's worth taking the time to ensure that your container's clean, keeps you safe, it keeps everybody else safe, it keeps the source safe. Those would be the prime considerations, I would say, that we'd be looking at to try to enforce. And I think that education components is big, is just creating a culture around the water safety.
Yeah, so the rain barrel program
Yes.
that they have in Mahone Bay, and I hadn't heard about Queens, that's excellent.
Yeah.
So if we were interested in implementing something like that, what would the steps be?
I was only able to talk a little bit to somebody from Mahone Bay on their program a little bit. I think it was basically they procured so many barrels. I think even Queens did water totes as well for people. I think I don't know if they did some kind of application system that people applied. I think you could probably do that to, say, if your wells continue going dry, maybe you do that, like target whoever you need. I think it's more procuring the barrels, and they did kind of as a giveaway kind of a system. I don't know if that was first come, first serve or something, but I can look into that a little bit more, for sure.
Councillor Oikel?
Yes. I like your option, your staff's recommendation, but I'm wondering regarding whether we would also continue with the water coupons as well as the station outside, as well as last year, even though we ended up getting water, it was kind of getting scary, that possibility we would have the drought right into the winter, right? And if you do an investigation, more than, the word pilot program, I don't really think that's the right word you're looking for there, because you're not really doing anything, you're getting more information to know what to do. To figure out what possibility we can do for our residents in delivering water for them, potable water in the winter, if the drought were to ever go into this winter, colder weathers. Because obviously what we have out there, we can't drag in and out every day, right?
I wouldn't suggest that we would
Yeah.
continually do
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
It got us through that situation. I think from my understanding, Alex, we have a policy that guides the water coupon program. So I see this as kind of run in parallel with it, which gives a wider option while we can. And then those wells that maybe don't recover, we still have the coupon program to supply them with water, not to leave anybody behind. Just having a preliminary discussion with our insurer, there was quite a few questions that came up, so we need to talk to them a little bit further. I would hope that if we had the coupon program in the water fill station, that maybe we could provide that education around, you should, if you're using the outside tap, to maybe boil that water or do that before you used it for like a potable kind of need, other than another water use. And then we could also provide the water coupon to say, we do have a potable option that's safe, we know that's safe through the bottle, as well as given the volume through the tap. That would be kind of an avenue that the insurer might be receptive to too.
Sounds good to me.
I'll just, Steve Pace here, I'll just summarize it. It sounds like an easy project, but actually it's taken a lot of brainstorming over the last year. It's actually quite complicated, and liability and risk involved. And so I think we've worked a lot with just getting information, and Tyler's done a great job rounding that up. And looking forward to partnerships, I think, is a real positive way. We've worked with Chris Kennedy, who's reached out to a number of the fire departments, and there's been half a dozen that have expressed interest. We've been speaking with the LCLC and working with Sherry in communications, how to communicate this to people. So it's quite a project that this is, I think, a great time to get the data, to get more information, and to work a path forward.
Mayor McLean-Weil?
Thank you. Thank you for the information. I think there's a couple of things here. I'm really worried that we're on the verge of another serious drought situation.
I understand, like continually as it comes up, exactly.
So I think there's an element here that seems to be missing, and that was in a conversation that the deputy mayor and I had with the town of Lunenburg and their willingness to offer support in terms of servicing residents from the Second Peninsula, Blue Rocks, First Peninsula area, that end of the district where we know that they utilized the resources in Lunenburg last year, so that the option we have for our own location, if we could have another one of those built that could be serviced through Lunenburg, there is a willingness in Lunenburg to work with us on this. So I think we should be taking them up on that offer, and because it's also one of the more inexpensive options here. So that's one point. The second point I want to make is that I'm not sure I think it would be, we all need more information, or think we do, but I think what the issue becomes here is that knowing where what communities are affected by drought will vary from season to season and year to year. So the data we collect now may not actually serve us well as we go forward. So I'm not sure how much data collection we need to do here. I think it would be much more prudent to start on the option of looking at, because it's great to have a location here. We have one in here and one in Lunenburg, but then people in the northern part where I think anecdotally we know that the northern part of our municipality is more dramatically affected. It may be along the coast as well, but I think we have a sense of that. It would be more productive to work with a couple of partners in the northern part of the community and perhaps identify one in the southern area so that people aren't having to make long-distance drives to access water. So I think the issue of drought and climate change, this is not a short-term solution, and we need to really build in community thinking around how we solve these problems. So I think picking a couple of locations and looking at how we can develop a community well in partnership with whether it be the fire department or the community hall, I think is our better investment. It isn't going to solve it this year, and I'm sorry for residents that are going to have to rely on other options. But I'm not excited about spending $300,000 on building a building here. I don't think that's a good spend of our money. If we have to spend money and support communities in this, I think that's a better approach, and identifying a couple of key areas to either north and south, maybe one in each, where you can get good partnership and work through the issues, whether it be having to install a UV system or whatever the treatment system might be to support the ongoing testing. I think that would be better expenditure of money than building a $300,000 building to service the whole area. So I would rather see us put our energy to working with Lunenburg, get another location, and find the partners and build this out, and not take the next season to do it. We can do that. It might be really good to put a sign out front to just say, just drop in and let us know where we're trying to collect information.
Yep.
That's not perfect, but it would involve a lot less staff resources, so we could monitor on an ongoing basis to some extent. I don't know, but my feeling is let's try to find the partners that can do this and work with them.
Councillor Smith, with my apologies, I will learn to read my list in order next time.
No, I was happy to hear what the mayor had to say first. And just to kind of double down on water shortages in the northern part of the municipality, you know, I'm hearing from people already in my community who have dry wells, who didn't have dry wells before 2020, but now it's a regular thing, and already this season they're dry. The New Germany Medical Center also had a dry well where it went below the foot valve. I don't know if I've got my vocab right there, but it was, they had to close, you know, for a number of days because of the water shortage. And I think that is actually maybe something to look into, is that they need to upgrade their water supply. Could there be an opportunity to look at us partnering and making it also some kind of public water source? And I know that this is not my idea. Other people are looking into it. I didn't mean to make it sound like it was an original idea. But there are people in that area who are very, very motivated to get working on this issue, just as they have on food security. And I'll just say about the data, like, numbers do help when people are looking at funding applications and meeting with their MLAs or meeting with us, you know, just to show like what the situation is, because there don't seem to be great numbers about how many wells are going dry. And I was hoping that maybe we could start if we're not already collecting it, making that data available to community groups so that they can have a better sense of what's going on. The water coupon program must have postal codes attached. Our dry well assistance program must also have some postal codes attached, like what data can we provide to people so that they know, have a better sense of what's happening in their communities.
Yes, Councillor Smith, you're correct. The coupon program, in order to receive the coupons, you have to provide us with your civic address. So we do since 2016, I believe was the first year we ran that program. Every year that we ran it, we have that. I can confirm your suspicions. There is no geographic pattern. It matters more what your individual circumstance is rather than, oh, well, all the dry wells are in Parkdale or all the dry wells are in Green Bay. If you put them on a map, which we've done, they're scattered all throughout the municipality. The useful information is the numbers, so we're able to show a consistent problem over a number of years. We don't have that data, as you've pointed out, Madam Mayor, for the outdoor tap because there's no requirement to come in and see us first. So we could encourage folks to get that, but again, that's voluntary data, so it's not the best quality data. And I would like to just do some work to go through council's preference for options as long as we've satisfied all the questions, but I don't want to cut anyone off.
Councillor Moore.
Thank you. I really like Elspeth and Allison's projection on working with partners in the north. I speak to the chairperson or president of the medical center on a regular basis. He's a pretty decent guy. And so anyway, yes, the water situation there can be very dire, and to shut that medical center down for any period of time is just, it's just not good. So, so I'm looking forward to working with Elspeth and staff to see what we can do in the northern part. Also, with the water coupons, I had stressed this last year, probably not to the right person, but I really would like to be able to have water coupons in my possession for a lot of people north of the 103 because they find it very hard just to drive down here or get someone to drive them to get water coupons. We have the Fresh Partner Germany, whereas they could come to me, I would keep track of civic numbers, postal codes and everything, and it would just be very convenient for a lot of people in that area. Thank you.
Councillor Oikel.
Yeah, so I also like the idea of having work with the communities, but I'm just thinking if it took 2 years for the insurance to get, it may not be something, it may even, even though it has already, the wheel has already been invented, it may still take a few months in order to do that. So I just wanted to kind of put that out there so that our residents aren't thinking, oh, you know, in the next couple of weeks, we're going to have something, right? It may take a while.
The chair will speak. I like the idea of community wells more, primarily because I like the idea of dispersing locations out from which people can actually get the water. A lot of my residents are privileged enough to live very close to this building, and so it's easier, but I very much recognize and watch people going up and down the 10 with totes of water in previous years. So I think it would be important to disperse where the locations were. Depending on the direction given by council today, whether it's worth it or not, I would like some more information on the $300,000 cost. It seems like on its face, it seems like a little bit of a go away quote. There's people building homes for $400,000, so I understand there's a lot of things there, but it would be useful to me when residents say, what do you mean you didn't do it because you said it would be $300,000? I could do it for 10. Those will be conversations I have, and being armed with the right facts as to where and how we accumulate to $300,000 would be useful, and frankly, that could be an email depending on your time constraints and how the rest of the discussion here goes. Councillor Brooks.
I'm very supportive of seeing what New Germany's needs are. That clinic has got to be taken care of, and I really do like the idea of some partnerships that might allow for a facility to double down on some resources. As far as the $300,000 price tag, like the mayor, I would have concern if it was all centrally located here. I think I would have much less concern if it was dispersed in 3 or 4 areas of the district. I think that we're trying to future think here a little bit. We don't know what the season will be, but things already don't necessarily look good. I think it is a quality of life issue. I think it is an ongoing investment issue, and I think our constituents will feel like we are attentive to them if we try to find partnerships and locations where they're not spending their whole day going to get 5 gallons of water. So that's what I support.
Are there any more questions, discussion points before Councillor Oikle?
Can you elaborate a little bit more on the rain barrel program? Because I use rain barrels, but I use them to gather the water from off my roof, through my gutter, and I water my garden with it.
Yeah.
So is that basically what is happening?
I think that's the intention of the project, yeah. It would be through a gutter or through rain collection in some way that you could use, yeah, in your garden, maybe flush your toilet with it or
Right.
something. It's nothing to drink.
Oh, okay, because I know in, I think it's Ketchikan, which is in Alaska, that's the only way they get their water,
Yeah.
is from the rain.
Yeah.
And it's in huge, gigantic, whatever they are, right?
If there are no more burning questions or discussion points, I was going to give the floor to our Deputy CAO to help refine the direction that we're about to provide.
And just before I do that, on rain barrel programs, I live on a shallow well, and we use rain barrels, not for potable water, but when it goes dry, it allows us to flush toilets and provide water to chickens and gardens and whatnot. So I would like to just make sure that staff are clear on the direction. Based on the presentation, I haven't heard any comments in favor of constructing a winterized building. I just want to confirm, by show of hands, is there any interest in continuing to explore a year-round winterized building at the Municipal Services Building? No. Wonderful. Eliminated an option. I also did not hear any comments in favor of installing a commercial jug filling station out of the Municipal Services Building. No interest. Wonderful. I did hear supportive comments of continuing to provide a temporary filling station during periods of drought outside the Municipal Services Building using that fabricated system. So just by show of hands, can I confirm council still interested in providing that service? Am I allowed to ask that? Well, I just did. The chair can overrule me if he likes.
Please proceed.
Okay. Now, the engineering department has suggested that the service at the Municipal Services Building, because of some traffic flow issues, that it should run concurrent with our coupon program. So when we reach a precipitation deficit and have received concerns from residents, then it will be installed. So it runs in alignment with that, as opposed to being out, for example, year-round, or the full period that it's warm. I see some shaking heads. I would like to hear
Councillor
some more
Moore.
clarity on that from council.
I like the full time, because not every community is the same, and not every resident's issues or have the same problems every year like they would the year before. I would want it to, what I'm trying to say is I would want it to be available year-round.
So just,
Also, would it freeze if it was?
yes,
outside?
for
Okay.
clarity, not the option that because we've eliminated a winterized building, it would only be available when the temperature is warm enough that there's no risk of freezing pipes.
Yes, that's what I want.
Okay.
Okay.
We can take that information away. There are some concerns around communicating what's potable and what's not, but it's helpful to receive that direction.
I would also say that While it appears to not be a large cost, having it there as a temporary measure during the warm weather months this year would be useful to many folks. I've heard from residents on it, and then through other employment, I've already seen homes on closing day where the transaction is troubled by lack of water. So I think that it is going to continue to be an issue this year.
Yep, as I think we've said a couple of times, the cost isn't the water, it's the maintenance and testing that's required to happen, but certainly some direction that we can take away. I heard support for the partnership with the town of Lunenburg, who have expressed willingness to provide a similar station so that we have a location in the south. I see lots of nodding heads, wonderful. And then I heard several comments in support of exploring a partnership with a community organization to provide some sort of community well option in the northern end of the municipality. Also nodding heads. And just to be clear, we will be looking at the approach that Chester has taken so that we're able to provide a level of confidence that there is good quality water and there's support for the community group.
I believe it was also mentioned somewhere in possibility a community organization in the southern part of our municipality as well, in the Petite, that area. I believe the mayor mentioned that as well.
I did, but it may be more reasonable just to try to find one to start with.
Okay.
Within the budget and the actual staff time available to do this. Ideally, we would want to see similar in the south, but
Okay.
I think let's be realistic about what we can do.
Yeah, as has been suggested by a few council members, there is a community group already working on this in the northern portion of the municipality. So we have a community organization that we can work with. So it would help us to focus on a single project this year and see what's achievable, and then learn some lessons from that. Finally, there was some discussion on the rain barrel program. Is there desire for more exploration of that?
Councillor Smith?
I was wondering if the rain barrel project could fit in with our climate change plan. And because we haven't really discussed what projects are going to come out of that budgeted amount. And I can't remember at the moment what we had budgeted for the climate change projects versus what, say, Queens has spent on their rain barrel program, which was fantastically successful. But it seems to fit in that that domain of like education around water efficiency and equipping people to learn new skills and respond to drought in their own way. I really like the idea of some kind of rain barrel initiative. However much we can pay for a rain barrel, I don't know, but I would definitely like to explore it possibly as part of the climate plan.
I would agree as well.
So we're not in a position to answer questions about it. The rain barrel program came up as a side effect of the research that we're doing, but right now we're looking for clarity. Do you want further information on a possible rain barrel program, or is that not of interest because it won't target potable water and staff should focus on other options?
Councillor Bell?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to see us concentrate on getting one of these community wells built, preferably in the northern area. If we can partner, that's better yet. But let's spend the money, get that well established, and learn from that. Maybe next year, once we know how it works, how the partnership works, we might do one in the south. As far as all these other things, we got too many irons in the fire. Let's concentrate on something that will help a group in the northern area and not worry about rain barrels and everything else for now.
What I'm going to suggest to folks is we've given pretty clear direction on what we're going to do with regard to potential community wells. Just by a quick show of hands, who would like more information on rain barrel programs and where they would more appropriately fit? 3. Anyone willing to postpone that discussion? Hands? 1, 2, 3, 4. It looks like we're postponing that conversation for now. Councillor Moore?
Just to follow up, through you to Alex, are you agreeable or staff agreeable to let municipal councillors distribute water coupons in their area?
I can't actually answer that. Susan Berry, our recently departed corporate services supervisor, ran the program, and I can't remember the intricacies of, I know that we had made changes to how the coupons were distributed,
Okay.
so I have to get back to you.
We'll talk.
Is there any more direction that would be helpful? Okay. Any more discussion, questions, excitement on this report and item? Seeing none, we'll move on to item 9.3.1, amendment to policy 043, community grants programs sponsorship requests. There you go.
Good morning, council members. So I'm here speaking again on behalf of Susan Berry and the corporate services team who did the research for this project. If you'll recall, late in the last fiscal year, we received a presentation from the group that operates the Bridgewater Food Bank. So they had identified that they were in a financial position where they weren't going to be able to meet all of their expenses, and they were deferring capital projects because they were using reserves to pay their deficit, for their operating deficit. I just need to grab the report. So council indicated support for the financial concern, given the importance of the food bank to MODL residents and residents in the region. And $20,000 was included in this year's budget to be distributed to food banks. So our corporate services staff completed research. They explored 15 to 20 different municipalities, looking to identify if there were specific grants for food banks. There are a number of municipalities, including our own, do allow food banks to apply as a community group to their general food bank or to their general grant programs for community organizations. No municipalities other than the District of Guysborough provide a grant specifically for food banks. The Guysborough program is quite extensive. They have support for a food security program, so it covers grants to a couple of schools to provide food programs for students, and it does provide funding directly to a food bank. Their annual budget is around $35,000 a year for both of those programs. So staff have recommended the development of a grant specific for food banks. The approach that our corporate services staff have recommended is to provide some consistency and fairness between the food banks that provide services to MODL residents. So it was a Bridgewater Food Bank that came forward with support. We did inquire briefly with the other food banks who have indicated that they are seeing increased demand, obviously increased costs. Everybody's seeing the increase in costs on their own grocery bills. And so the approach that's recommended is to provide a grant specific for the food banks that provide support to municipal residents. And it would be an amount that council would select each year in the budget, which would then be shared based on the proportion of total MODL residents being served by food banks. So if there was 1,000 households using food banks, Bridgewater's food bank is serving 50%, then they would receive 50% of that grant and the remaining portion going to each of the other food banks. So we would be happy to hear some discussion on the proposal. And then if council is supportive of that, we would recommend that you include a new schedule in your grants program, and then we can disperse the funds that were included in this year's budget.
Councillor Brooks.
Yeah, I would just say to the Deputy CEO, in agreeing with this, that I think that whatever amount we set, giving the stability to the food banks just so they can have a line item when they're trying to predict their year, that's the least that we can do. So I would be very in support of trying to figure out how do we do that so they know right out of the gate that modal is going to be supporting for X dollars and they can go forward from there. But it's the least that we can do, so I would be very supportive of that.
Councillor Oikel.
But that is not this, correct? This is that they would have to apply every year for a grant, not what Councillor Brooks had suggested, which is be a line item that they would get money. No, that it would be part of our budget discussion every year that they would get the money. So I'm just wanting to clarify for Councillor Brooks to understand.
Yes, in terms of stability, we don't expect that the formula that we've proposed would change very much, so there would be a sort of basic amount that they could expect, just given that the demographics shouldn't change significantly. We were proposing it fit under our normal community grants program, which would involve an application, but there's a limited number of food banks, and so if we didn't see an application, I believe staff could handle prompting the application to ensure that all of the food banks received the support.
Councillor Moore.
How would, maybe you said this, how would staff know which food banks are the busiest to distribute?
So we would receive information from the food bank, which would identify how many households from MODL were served by the food bank.
Okay.
So we've confirmed that that's not a data problem for those food banks.
Okay.
So you have that information from the
Right.
previous year, you know what percentage of households being served are visiting that food bank, and you can provide the funding
And they do not
that way.
have to put in an application, is what you're saying?
No, they, under this proposal, yes, they would.
Yes,
Yeah.
they would.
Yeah.
But the money that's in the budget now, is that what the applications would be going into, or are you just gonna take care of the money in the budget now and distribute that?
So the money has been approved in the budget. If the staff recommendation goes forward, then we would ensure that it goes to all of the food
Okay,
banks.
good. All
Yeah.
right, perfect, thank you, thank you.
If there's no further questions on the presentation, I would welcome a motion. Councillor Bell.
Thank you. To the Vice Chair, Councillor Burns, and members of the committee, I move that Municipal Council amends Policy 43, Community Grants Program, Sponsorship Request to include a food bank grant category as presented, and hereby gives 7 days' notice of its intent to adopt at the July 14th, 2026 council meeting. I so move.
And do I have a seconder? Councillor Moore. All those in favor, please raise your hands. Oh, wait, apologies. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please raise your hands. Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Moving on, or do folks need a 2-minute break, or are people good to keep going? No, keep going? Okay. Moving on, we're going to move to item 9.3.2, pre-construction housing grant.
So we have Kwan Kee Soy and Shannon McKay, who are our research analysts here for the summer. and they'll be providing the presentation. This is coming out of the action items for Council's housing strategy.
Good to go.
Good morning. As you know, the housing strategy was finalized earlier in the year. Kwan Kee and I are here this morning with a request for decision regarding a key action from the housing strategy, which is the creation of a pre-development grant. Sorry, thank you. Our recommendation is that Council approve the introduction of a pre-construction housing grant for not-for-profit affordable housing developers following the outline described in the report and this presentation. The detailed recommendations that follow are modeled after the Town of Bridgewater's pre-construction grant program, which was introduced in fall 2025. We propose that MODL's grant be in the amount of $50,000 per organization per project, and that applications must seek to produce at least 4 new affordable housing units per project and commit to those units as being affordable for a minimum of 15 years.
And here's some background information for the grant. Oh, sorry. Here's some definitions for the major terminologies being referenced in the RFD. There are multiple definitions of affordable housing in the field. In this RFD, we are adhering to the definition of costing less than 30% of the household before tax income. And we're using the term of pre-construction and pre-development costs interchangeably in this RFD. They typically include feasibility study, initial planning, site and technical studies, design and development costs, cost and permit and applications, and cost incurred from professional personnel and services. Setting up the grant is a key action identified from the housing strategy. It also helps filling gaps before traditional financing models and It also helps filling gaps before traditional financing models, methods, and support the capacity of nonprofit housing developers. Currently, there are larger funding opportunities for developers. However, they're very competitive. Therefore, by providing an additional funding stream, we are working to reduce barriers to creating housing and to attract more potential developers in the region.
So yeah, just to clarify, like all the costs for this grant are pre-construction, pre any shovel in the ground construction costs, and there are larger loans available to take care of that construction financing. But to get to that point, these organizations have to do a lot of work with the costs Kwan Kee mentioned to get there. So there are quite a few of these pre-construction grant programs across the country. We predominantly reviewed East Coast examples, and most have been introduced within the last 5 years. So they're quite new tool. For example, Port Coquitlam just announced its program at the beginning of June. So yeah, the funding landscape is constantly changing. Although this list of jurisdictions is not exhaustive, we were unable to find a rural municipality offering a construction grant. So this does present an opportunity for MODL to be an early adopter and leader in using affordable housing grants to support development in a rural context. Most municipalities are using the Canadian Mortgage and Housing Corporation's Housing Accelerator Fund to start these programs, while others have dedicated reserve funds that they use to budget for these grants. Grants are ranging from $10,000 to $50,000, $50,000, often have limitations around the minimum number of affordable units, and they're quite broad, including any of the soft costs that help organizations reach that construction financing phase. It is important to note that land purchases are never included in these costs from what we have seen in the scan. Land agreements typically need to be in place before applying to a pre-construction grant program. There are also some larger pre-development funds at the federal and provincial level. For example, funding from the provincial government through the Community Housing Transformation Center. CMHC also had a pre-development grant up until recently, so we do see opportunity for applicants to be stacking these funds with provincial and federal pre-development financing, as well as potentially other municipal grant offers.
And here are some detailed recommendations on the grant structure and eligibility criteria. Eligibility to the grants are determined by the organization's type and capacity. We are recommending to accept applications from registered nonprofits and charities, cooperative organizations, and our community interest cooperations. And for your information, community interest cooperations are for-profit organizations that have a mandate of using its profit to benefit their communities, and they have strict bylaws on reinvesting their revenues into the community. The applicants does not need to be a MODL or Nova Scotia-based. They don't need to be MODL or Nova Scotia-based to be eligible. We welcome all Canadian organizations to apply to the grant as long as the proposed project fulfills the criteria, which will be discussed on the next few slides. And the recommended eligible expenditure include professional service, technical studies, design and planning costs, municipal fees, and financial analysis. And costs included prior to grant applications, costs spent on land acquisition, construction, organizational costs, fundraising activities, and equipment purchase are not eligible expenditure for the grant.
The project eligibility recommendations are intended to support density and the development of sustainable long-term affordable housing throughout Lunenburg County. So this is based off of Bridgewater's model, but we've created some slight changes for the MODL context. Under the proposed model, applications could be submitted for projects located anywhere within Lunenburg County. So projects would not be required to be located within MODL. Staff are recommending this approach because previous housing research identified that affordability is really a regional issue, with low vacancy rates and significant movement of residents across municipal boundaries. Housing markets throughout the region are really closely connected. So as a result, increasing the supply of affordable housing anywhere within the county is really going to help reduce housing pressures across the region, including in MODL. We also propose that projects should be for developments that create a minimum of 4 affordable units. This is again to improve density, and units could be contained in one building or spread across multiple buildings, provided they are part of the same project. This leaves flexibility for developers looking to create cluster housing developments. These developments could also be a mix of affordable or market-based housing, as long as 50% of the development is affordable. Applicants must also outline a plan to keep units designated as affordable for at least 15 years. The grant would also be limited to new construction projects or major renovations that result in net new units. So no renovations that are just redoing existing units into affordable. It has to be net new. And again, these requirements are to ensure projects have the most overall impact on long-term affordable housing. We also want to avoid funding projects that don't have a long-term path to construction. So we want to really help the grant. We want the grant to help nonprofit developers reach the stage where they're ready to apply to these larger funding organizations. So to do that, we're also suggesting to have a pre-application meeting with staff and applicants so that everyone has a clear idea of that organization's capacity, and staff can also direct applicants to some of the larger funding opportunities and assess that long-term vision. Just to give you an example of what that process looks like, an applicant might specify they will use pre-development funds to secure a phase 1 environmental assessment, as that is a prerequisite to apply to Nova Scotia's affordable housing development program. So that in those assessments are in the tens, can I think, and be in the tens of thousands of dollars. So it's just really helping organizational capacity. The funding structure of providing up to 66% of the total project cost to a maximum of $50,000 is based on the existing Comfort Center generator funding grant within Modal. The structure does differ from the town of Bridgewater. They are offering, they will fund the whole application. But this keeps us in line with the other grants we offer and also encourages applicants to seek other funding partners and develop those relationships and internal capacity. We do suggest this be a non-repayable grant to keep barriers low for nonprofits, and to ensure projects move ahead in a timely manner. We propose projects should begin within 3 months and end within 12 months of receiving funds.
And here's the procedure of the review and approval process. Prior to the rollout of the grant, staff will provide a recommended evaluation criteria to the council to be reviewed and approved. And after getting approval from the council on the evaluation criteria, staff will use it to evaluate and approve the applications. And then staff will report to the council for the decisions on the applications. And applications will be accepted and assessed throughout the year.
To understand the overall success of the program, we're also suggesting some basic outputs that could be tracked over time, like applications received, total number of projects reaching construction phase.
Okay. And here are some considerations for the implementation for the. Here are some considerations for implementing the proposed pre-development grant. The grant aligns with the Council's strategic priority of affordability, quality of life, social inclusion, and regional economic development, as housing is currently ranked second on the project prioritization list. The grant will also align with improving inclusion, diversity, equity, and accessibility in Modal by supporting affordable housing for marginalized groups who are currently disproportionately impacted by challenges related to housing costs. The grant will have indirect but positive impact to climate change and sustainability by providing potential developers opportunities to consider aspects like incorporating climate resilience and green designs on the housing project at an early stage. And in terms of strategic communication, the rollout of the grant will be advertised through existing channels, and there will be targeted outreach to key stakeholders to make sure the public will be aware of the grant. MODL staff will communicate with applicants directly to provide support and clarifications on their applications. And in terms of financial implications, there is currently $100K allocated in the budget, so it will not cause additional implications. Staff time and capacity will require consideration in the work plan. Staff time will be required on the pre-application communication and meetings, on reviewing and assessing the applications, and on outcome tracking of the approved project, which may increase staff workload or may require additional resources.
There are a few risks in continuing with this grant. The first is there's no guarantee that projects will actually continue past the pre-development phase. Unfortunately, that's out of our hands. It could be due to organizational limitations or an environmental assessment saying a site is unsuitable for development, or an organization struggles to actually get that long-term construction funding. We're mitigating this risk by developing the relationships with funders through the pre-application meetings, seeking developers with affordable housing experience, and also ensuring that applicants do have that long-term plan in place of being able to identify what the actual construction funding financing opportunity they're going to be applying for. The other issue is that the nonprofit housing space is still growing. There's been an increase in organizations dedicated to this work, but we may see limited demand in the first year or so after implementing this grant. For example, Bridgewater has only funded one application in its first year. So although this initiative may take time to see results, it's a strong step in attracting developers to the region as a whole, and hopefully inspiring more groups to pursue funding options that weren't accessible before. There are several alternatives if council wishes to take a different direction. We could revisit the project eligibility and adjust the criteria. So again, we're proposing 50% of the project be affordable units with a minimum of 4 affordable units. However, we could remove this if we want more flexibility in the proposals. And we're also open to other adjustments to the criteria, of course, as suggested by council. Another option, although not recommended, is to adopt the interest-free loan format. So the City of Toronto has in their pre-development grant, organizations that are not able to proceed with construction do not have to pay back the grant, but if you do receive construction financing later, you pay it back in a known interest loan format. So that could create like a self-sustaining fund for the municipality, but it would require staff time in administering and increase the burden on nonprofits. And when we're trying to grow capacity, that's why we're suggesting it's not recommended. We're also suggesting that staff review and approve grant applications, but if council desires the final approval, that could be an option. And lastly, council could choose to take an approach that deviates from the housing strategy by not providing the pre-development grant and reallocating the funds in the budget. So in conclusion, the approval of this grant follows through with actions from the housing strategy, puts us in line with the Town of Bridgewater's program, and would help build the capacity of nonprofit housing organizations across Lunenburg County, improving affordable housing and housing outcomes for MODL residents over the long term. So thank you for your time, and open to any questions and discussion.
Deputy Mayor Vino, followed by Councillor Smith.
Thank you. I don't have a question, just a, excuse me, just a clarification. Under your project eligibility slide, the projects suggested were just based in Lunenburg County. So these could also be in Town of Mahone Bay, Lunenburg, Bridgewater. Does Bridgewater have a similar program? If projects are in modal, they help contribute to the projects as well?
Great question. No, Bridgewater's is limited to the Town of Bridgewater. I don't know the history of that discussion, if they may be open to, if we opened ours up, if they may be as well. I'll leave that.
Councillor Smith?
So if a project is funded for, a feasibility study or something that doesn't go ahead, do they report back to modal, and then we get that information about why the project wasn't feasible or successful?
Yes, so we do have reports would be included, and I think we could definitely add that. And I hope also that the pre-application staff meeting would kind of create a natural pathway for that relationship, that people check in and make updates. But yes, there would be a formal process for checking back in about construction.
Councillor Brooks.
I really liked one of the options. Thank you, by the way, both of you, for your presentation. I like the idea of us crafting something that becomes sustainable and ongoing. So a no-interest loan program, I think maybe takes a little bit of the risk off us. I just don't want to see us be the lead supporter on something and then find that program goes away. So something that gave us some protections, and also I think made it clear to developers that this is a good thing, but there's context with it. So yeah, thank you.
Councillor Oikel.
Thank you. Yeah, I would like not to see that it is not outside of modal. Like, I think it should be developers that are developing things within modal. I really like the pre-application meeting, because that will certainly help the developers of the nonprofit really see what is needed, and their limitations perhaps will come out so that future problems won't happen. And I do agree also with the no interest loan rather than just giving the money, because sometimes nothing happens. Like, the money is given and then it's still, the answer is no. They aren't able to do it, right?
Councillor DeLong.
Thanks. Thank you for the presentation. Could you speak a bit more to why we would or wouldn't adopt a regional focus for this, like why we would be offering this to developers in different parts of the region?
So the research from the housing strategy and all the research that went into that, I think one of the main points was that housing is very regional in Lunenburg County, with people working coming and going, living somewhere and working somewhere else. And because there's such a low capacity, that any new developments is going to kind of create less pressure on the overall housing. But I will let the Deputy CEO speak to that as well.
Shannon hit it bang on. As we did the housing strategy research, it became clear places where there is enough non-market supply that it can actually influence price points for market housing. Those percentages are at like 20% of the housing market, and we are at below 5%. So that in the region, so the providing affordable nonprofit housing is the best way to provide long-term sustainability, and we are nowhere close to a percentage that would have any kind of impact on the broader market. So the strategy is very clear. You want to see more of this kind of housing, and there aren't a lot of providers here. There's also a financing issue. The numbers are very tight for organizations that want to provide this. And so the recommendation around, for example, making it a grant as opposed to a repayable loan, all of the ones that use a repayable loan, it's zero interest, but the ones that get repaid are the successful ones. The ones that don't proceed become a grant because they have no project to then recoup that money back from. And the loan becomes part of what gets capitalized in the larger project, which then impacts the affordability on the other end of it. So that's why our research team has recommended a grant as opposed to a repayable loan. And the important thing to bear in mind is that this is seed money to allow it to happen. And if you want to take that analogy just one step further, it's seed money, and when you plant seeds, they don't all sprout. You have to be accepting of that fact. Now, it does create a financial burden for the municipality because it's not replenishing, but the replenishing components would be if you were funding the larger part of the project. And this program is explicitly not for that. It's to try and incentivize these projects to happen, not to be able to be a large-scale financer, because your strategy identifies that you're not part of that. And then the last part, I promise I will actually answer your question. Because the finances are quite tight, density is an important part that drives it. And now, Shannon and Kwan Kee have done an excellent job at ensuring that we consider the rural environment. So the number of units is low, so it's still appealing if you have somebody who's able to try and make cluster development work, for example. It's not restricting the type of development, so it's not saying they have to be multiplexes, for example. But the reality is most of the affordable housing projects that happen will want serviced land, and the majority of that is found within the towns that we surround. And so it is a strong recommendation from staff that you consider projects that aren't necessarily within our boundaries, because housing has to be solved regionally. Even if our partners don't fully see it that way, we know it's the truth.
Yeah, just quick follow-up. I can appreciate why we would want to have affordable housing in more centralized locations so that the residents can access the services there and have, as you say, like water and whatnot connected. So yeah, I think that the regional approach makes a great deal of sense.
Councillor Smith. Who else is?
Okay, I was just going to suggest if someone else hadn't spoken already, but I just wanted to support us offering the grant rather than a loan. I know a group that's going through this process right now of doing a feasibility study. They do not have the money to take out a loan to do a feasibility study, and it's very, it's very precarious when you're a nonprofit, especially if you're a new nonprofit, trying to undertake this kind of work. And I think we have to recognize that the nonprofit housing landscape is not well developed in Nova Scotia, and not in this area as well. So if we're expecting them to take loans out, we're really shrinking the pool of people who can be doing this work. And I think we want innovation, and we want it coming from our own communities. So I strongly support the grant rather than a loan, and maybe that could be adjusted later. I am a little bit hesitant about not prioritizing modal projects specifically, because I want to see projects happening in New Germany, Bars Corner, Petite, like in the hamlets and villages that, are growth centers, and Osprey Village, sorry. And my feeling is that we didn't get housing accelerator funding. So other units are getting money to grow their housing in there, and they're not making those grants available to rural modal or suburban modal. So we should be prioritizing the rural areas and the villages. So I'm leaning that way, because I do understand the regional perspective, but when we're not getting money as a region, it's a little lopsided.
The chair is going to recognize the chair, then Councillor DeLong, then Deputy Vino. For me, and this comes from someone who represents a district that borders the town largely, and so there is a large connection with it. But what I hear from people continuously is, don't spend my money in Bridgewater. And this is the harsher part of my decision making that has to come in. But there is one taxpayer regardless of who they pay. And there are folks who've paid federal taxes who are then, that's being distributed into the towns, and I very much understand why. What I very much don't understand is why we are unable to get the same housing accelerator funds. And there are folks, we've discussed at length about how community specific our county and our municipality is, and people will say, well, you did it in Bridgewater, but you did not do it in my community. And the fact that it is 15 minutes away does not change the view that people have about how to shape their community and where affordability should be. I'm also conscious of, this is an excellent policy, and what you've presented right now would make a lot of sense with no politics involved. If there was no regional tension between units, I certainly understand that. And I also understand that there needs to be, to make housing affordable, there needs to be an incredible amount of money. And a $50,000 grant, what we're really doing is greasing the skids to get someone started. This amount per door does not actually change the affordability. It's the same of a $3,000 a year grant per door for 15 years. So what this really is activation energy, not continuous funding for affordability. And I think, as we discuss about whether a project, if successful, could be repaid with other financing, or whether this is focused on getting people started and it's a loss leader for some and some repay it, I think that is, I would encourage council members to turn their mind to that, because there's likely in a rural setting, there's got to be another way that if we're putting big money into affordability, or we're targeting different aspects of affordability, like the property tax rebate, that where are we going to spend our funds to be most effective, recognizing that we are likely to have the same level of density that they are in the towns. So a couple of pieces at play with this policy. There's a good thing that I think that we're doing here, but I think we need to recognize what are the limits as our actor without additional large sums of funding, which is what the Housing Accelerator Fund was designed to do, to increase affordability and then best spend that money and then best recoup that money. And I'd rather see a policy that works for modal but ultimately fails, or not, but if it fails, it tells us that that's not right and we try something else, rather than simply say we should put this in Bridgewater, Mahone Bay, and Lunenburg. On that happy note, Deputy Mayor Vino, and then Councillor DeLong.
Nothing new to add. Councillor Smith spoke very well to some of the same concerns that I had with supporting projects in modal, and I know it's probably easier and more logical to build in town because of water and sewer, but if offering this grant might give developers options to build out in some of those outside communities, I think that's a win-win, because we hear all the time from everybody that we need housing, and we need it outside the town as well.
Councillor DeLong.
Yeah, no, having heard that vantage of it, that falls in line with my view as well of how we should be supporting our communities. Like I said, I can appreciate the regional nature of housing, but given that we were not successful in the Housing Accelerator Fund, focusing on our communities makes a lot of sense. If we were to look at a regional application of this, I would like to see it weighted towards modal grants. But if we're abandoning the regional perspective altogether, then so be it.
Deputy CAO.
So if it sounds like there is broad support for the grant itself, a lot of discussion around whether or not it should be a regional approach. It appears that there are three primary options. You could make it exclusive to MODL. You could leave it fully regional. You could direct staff to prepare options for you that favor MODL applications without excluding. So two obvious parameters that you could adjust is the maximum amount that you will fund and make that amount higher in MODL, or increase scoring in the grant so that it prefers projects that are in MODL without excluding other regional partners. So I guess I just look for direction from the group.
I'll recognize Mayor McLean-Weil.
I didn't speak. I really wanted to hear what people had to say. There's a couple of things that strike me about this. Is there's been a lot of comment around developers and how this might. The truth is, this is a program to try to fuel community action around addressing the housing issue. This money alone is not going to do that. We have a lot of work to do in helping communities understand that they can do something if they want, and that we're prepared to work with them. So to me, there's an element of this program that we haven't really talked about, and I'm not suggesting adding work, but I think if we don't do work to help communities understand the value of this, the understanding what's possible, we'll have $100,000 in our budget at the end of the budget year. So to me, there is work to be done here in developing community understanding around this, and I'm really pleased that the recommendation has come forward with the possibility that there are risks here that nothing may happen because we are so underdeveloped in our thinking around housing and who's responsible. And even here in the discussion, we get a little territorial about that because we didn't receive federal monies, and I get all that. But the study that we commissioned and paid for told us this is a regional issue. So I am very much in favor of recognizing that it is regional, and whether we do that in an application process to give, priority to our district but not exclude another while we're developing this. Over time, we could make more restrictions, but we are so underdeveloped here in our thinking about community housing that we just need to get started somewhere. And we have a lot of work to do in so many aspects of this. Thinking developers are going to come in and build something somewhere outside this area, I don't think that's very realistic in thinking about how we're going to really address the housing issue. So I do favor the need for an education piece with this and work to be done. And I wrote on this, whose responsibility is this going to be internally here to actually help champion that? Because there needs to be somebody there, and that's another whole layer to this that I don't think we've really had a good discussion about, and I'm not suggesting we do that today, but I think it's one thing to have a program, but it's another thing to really start something. I don't think that contributed much to what our deputy CAO was saying, but I did want to make those comments because I just feel we're making some assumptions that this is all just going to happen. And folks, it is not just going to happen. There's a lot of work to be done.
Councillor Brooks.
This issue about housing and the application process is not dissimilar from others where we try to fund something in hopes that it'll receive provincial or federal funds, and we don't know. We just throw it out there and we hope. One of the things that I liked that you folks said was this pre-application process. And I know that one of the things, just please give me a second, but some things that they're doing in medical clinics now is bring 3 specialists in and give people 15 minutes with the 3 specialists. So those decisions are made by those bodies together. Instead of, we're going to give you the money, good luck with the province, good luck with the feds, and 6 months later it didn't work out. So I know it's aspirational, but part of this communication where we feel good about these development dollars is to enhance that communication with those bodies to say, like, we're putting our neck on the line, guys. We're ready to do it. We want to do this. But you've got to work with a bit more speed and so that we can help these developers have the confidence. If you really want to support us in supporting them. So I know that's an idealistic comment, but with so many of these things, this is us in the municipality struggling to try to get our voice heard at the province and at the federal level. So I am absolutely in support of us trying to kickstart this program. It's a big thing to get our arms around, and whatever we can do to try to pull in those players earlier, I think will help us in the long run.
May I suggest that we put the motion on the floor. If the motion passes, then we can refine some direction as to what we'd like to see in the policy. I think that there's a couple points here that we'd like to see refined, but I'm seeing enough from the discussion that folks are going to want to have their say on the motion. So, Mayor McLean-Moyle.
To the Vice Chair, Councillor Burns, and members of the committee, I move that Municipal Council approve the introduction of a pre-construction housing grant for not-for-profit affordable housing developers and direct staff to draw a new policy for Council's consideration.
Seconded by Councillor Smith. Any discussion on the motion itself? Seeing none, all those in favor, please raise your hand. Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. So I know that there's a couple points here that we just need to provide some direction on. First, on the nature of the grant, what we're looking for, the options that I'm really hearing here are: is it an interest-free loan, or is it a grant that becomes an interest-free loan if the project is successful in obtaining financing? So for everyone who would like to leave it as just a grant, no matter what, please, by show of hands, let us know. 1, 2, 3, 4.
No, on both.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Moore. All those who would like to see it as a grant that becomes an interest-free loan if successful upon financing, please raise your hand. Looking forward to that discussion in the future when there's 2 other councillors who may break that decision. Apologies. Regional, how can I forget about that? So for regional, it appears that there's sort of 3 options that people were talking about. Modal only we'll put as option A, regional as option B, and then regional but weighted towards modal as option C. So all of those in favor of modal only, raise your hand. 5. Okay. All those who are in favor of pure regional, and all of those in favor of a weighted. 3. All right, that is all the direction we're going to give on this for now. It's 11:30, so I would propose that we continue on and just power through. If we finish before the flag raising, then we finish before the flag raising. So I would invite up, I believe it's Trudy, for option 9.4.1. Oh, Ruth. Welcome, Ruth.
All right, good morning, Council. So today I'm seeking direction on whether staff should submit an expression of interest to the Climate Ready Infrastructure Service, or the CRIS program. If successful, this would support approximately 12 nonprofit community halls with exploring energy retrofit opportunities. Council may recall that back in January, Navigate Energy and Aging Well Nova Scotia presented on their initiative focused on helping nonprofit community halls become more energy efficient. Following that presentation, staff met with Navigate Energy, as well with representatives from the CRIS program. This was to better understand how the program works, what the municipality's role would be, and what would be required if we did apply. The CRIS program is a federally funded program administered by the Canadian Urban Institute. The program connects municipalities and other eligible organizations with qualified technical experts. Rather than providing funding for construction, it funds technical planning work, in this case, options reports that identify energy retrofit opportunities and clean energy solutions for community halls. These reports provide the technical information needed to support future funding applications. If Council directs staff to proceed, we will submit an expression of interest requesting support for approximately 12 nonprofit community halls. If the application is approved, we will seek out community halls that could benefit from energy retrofits. Each participating hall would receive an assessment and an options report outlining potential energy efficiency upgrades and clean energy opportunities. Once those reports are complete, each hall can then decide whether to pursue funding applications independently or, where appropriate, work together as a cohort on future funding applications. The municipality's role would be to primarily coordinate the project and the works that and work with the selected expert and the participating community halls. It is important to note that the CRIS program does not fund any grant writing, so the expert wouldn't be able to write the grant on our behalf. However, the reports can be structured to align with existing funding programs. There is no direct financial implication for the municipality. The project work would require staff time to coordinate the application and, if successful, make the introductions to the community halls. If the community halls decide to pursue a joint funding application later, staff would also assist with coordinating that process. In summary, this is an opportunity to leverage existing funding to provide technical planning support to approximately 12 nonprofit community halls. The recommendation before you is that Council direct staff to submit an expression of interest for the Climate Ready Infrastructure Service Program and proceed with identifying approximately 12 nonprofit community halls within the District of Lunenburg that could benefit from energy retrofit opportunities.
Any questions or discussions on this? Councillor Oikel.
I'd like to talk. So I am assuming then, because staff is recommending it, that you feel you have the time, or staff has time, because many times it has been mentioned that there isn't any time to add new things to our wonderful list of items that we would like to do. So I'd like you, if you could comment on that, please.
We feel that, like, within my position, there would be capacity to take that on. A lot of the time would be submitting the initial expression of interest, which is quite short and wouldn't take a lot of time. Then the introductions and determining which community halls we would select, and then introducing the expert to those community halls. And if we were to pursue a large application as one big cohort, that would take some time. But I imagine I would work with Amy, our grant coordinator, in order to coordinate that grant application.
Trudy.
Yeah, and I'll just echo what Ruth just said. And I just think it's a great opportunity where we're looking at a community development model to work with 12 halls and to start, not that we don't have relationships, because we certainly do have relationships in the community. But again, it's staff getting out and working with community to help themselves, which is the whole, the whole definition and principle of community development.
Councillor Smith.
This looks a little bit different from what Navigate Energy and Aging Well Nova Scotia brought forward, in that The first phase looks the same as what they suggested, which was use the CRIS funding to do the kind of energy audits, look at options, and then have that information available for funding applications. But they were also talking about the next stage where they group together cohorts from across the province, or form a cohort of halls across the province for a large-scale application. And I know that I've seen that they're working in Richmond right now, and I think they've got some other places where things are emerging, and definitely we saw them at NSFM giving a presentation. They were at our volunteer day. Like, this project has the capacity to be quite huge as a cross-provincial cohort. I'm not opposed to us doing it in-house. I mean, I just love the idea of this project and community halls working together, so it wouldn't be a deal breaker for me, but I'm just curious as to why that shifted, and why this proposal has come for us to do it all in-house except for using the CRIS funding.
So Navigate Energy is a for-profit company that approached us, and they did offer to, if we applied for the CRIS funding, to write the funding application for the cohort. My understanding that would be a Lunenburg County cohort for the larger application and not necessarily across the province. So when I met with the CRIS funders, they said that the funding isn't intended to fund any applications for funding. So Navigate Energy did offer to do that for us, to write the application for specifically the Sustainable Communities Challenge Fund and any energy efficiency Nova Scotia grants. However, when I talked to the CRIS funders, they said our funding doesn't cover that cost. So there was a little bit of a discrepancy between what Navigate Energy offered us and then what the funding would cover. Does that make sense?
Well, the way they have presented it multiple times at different presentations I've seen is you go through the process with CRIS, you get the information to your halls, and then there was, the opportunity for another phase where there's applications put in for a cohort or group. So I realize that, they're kind of building the train as it's moving or whatever. So it wasn't completely fleshed out how that second phase would work. But that was an opportunity. And I'm just wondering, are we kind of closing off that option by saying that we're going to do the work on the 12 halls? Because that's a lot more work for us. Or would we be open to a second phase with a larger cohort across the province?
Well, so Navigate Energy did offer to write the funding applications for us. We didn't discuss how they would be compensated for that, because in the original conversations was that the CRIS funding would fund that second phase of the funding applications. We can go forth, submit our expression of interest, and if Navigate Energy is one of the proposed companies that the funders are providing us with on the short list, we can go forward and select them.
I'll recognize the CAO.
Yep, so just on that point, as we looked into it more, we became concerned that Navigate Energy was trying to set us up as a sole source award for any work to them without any kind of procurement, because there's a short list of engineering firms that's recognized in Nova Scotia that can be called upon to do this work. So when we had discussions with them, like, they were looking for us to enter into agreements with them. And then as Ruth followed up with the funding partners, it became clearer that the expression of interest, we can list the technical experts that we want to deal with, or leave it to be shortlisted. So we kind of stepped back and are taking an approach that we will do the expression of interest, see what comes back, work with qualified technical experts that are on the short list, see who's going to give us the best work, the best results, and then move that forward. So we're breaking it up more into steps, and this would be the first step.
Any further questions, discussions, comments? At that point, I'd welcome a motion on the floor. Councillor Moore.
To Vice Chair Councillor Burns and members of the committee, I move that the Municipal Council direct staff to submit an expression of interest for the Climate Ready Infrastructure Service (CRIS) program and proceed with identifying approximately 12 non-profit community halls in the District of Lunenburg that could benefit from the energy retrofit opportunities, and I so move.
Seconded by Councillor Oikel. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please raise your hand. All those opposed? Motion passes unanimously. As we have no added items, we've run out of the agenda, and I declare the meeting adjourned.